produce products under things like good agricultural practice and good manufacturing practice, so that, again, we are minimizing our impact on the environment and minimizing chemical contamination. And we can also look at a whole range of value-added products. So again, one of the earlier questions about pisang and how we might be able to handle pisang or what to handle the surplus, then of course pisang krepek and a whole range of other options and things emerge. So there are many, many different options here for farmers to engage with downstream consumers.
Professor, so 5 more minutes.
Thank you. We must acknowledge, however, that not all consumers are willing to pay the higher price that is necessary. Not all consumers have the personal disposable income, and so they will continue to purchase from their more traditional means. We also need to recognise that we're going to get competition from the conventional retailers. Conventional retailers are going to have a wider product range. Their prices will often be more competitive, particularly amongst the supermarkets. And from much of the research work that I've done with my PhD students from both Malaysia and Indonesia, we know that one of the key drivers for supermarket sales is the safety, the cleanliness, and indeed the air-conditioned environment that attracts consumers to purchase from supermarkets. And there's also the increasing customer service. These can all prove to be problematic for our smallholder farmers. We also need to acknowledge that consistent supply is going to be problematic. It's going to be difficult for smallholder farmers to maintain that continuity of supply in terms of the quality, the quantity, and the range of product that they have. Their costs will be high because they're only smallholder farmers and they have very few economies of scale. Their production by necessity is very labour intensive. And as we've also seen a moment ago, there are going to be difficulties in terms of transporting their markets, and it's also going to be very costly and difficult for smallholder farmers to enter into any third-party certification that will provide downstream consumers with an assurance that the food has been produced in the manner in which they expect. We must also acknowledge that smallholder farmers are going to have limited capacity in performing the roles of traditional market intermediaries. Because where smallholder farmers wish to engage directly with consumers, they must now undertake and perform the roles that the collector agents, the traders, the wholesalers and retailers would ordinarily undertake in terms of things like aggregation and consolidation, sorting and grading, packaging, transport and finance. But we also need to acknowledge that smallholder farmers have limited access to many of the sustainable technologies that they need. Crop rotations, for example, have always been a problem, particularly in Indonesia. For when I talk to farmers about their crop rotations, they'll tell me that they use tomatoes, bell pepper, chili, potato, eggplant. But of course, all of these are members of the family Solanaceae, and hence there are problems, of course, with the accumulation of soil-borne disease. There are problems too with the introduction of integrated pest management. There are problems also in terms of worker welfare, as we see here with the Vietnamese farmer and the lack of protective equipment in the application of chemicals. And there are clear problems in terms of things like gender inclusion and child labour. And so, if farmers are to engage directly with downstream consumers, one of the most important things that they will need to do is to form collaborative marketing groups. They will need to learn to work together. Through working together, they'll be able to obtain a sufficient supply of product and a sufficient variety of product that will make their offerings attractive. They will be able to offer a consistent quality product, and there will be reduced costs in terms of production, transport, quality insurance, and improved access to new technology. And to my final slide, we need to acknowledge the infrastructure impediments. There are difficulties and problems that need, in many cases, to be addressed by government. There are problems with transportation and logistics, as we have seen. There are problems in terms of market infrastructure, with the lack of water, poor sanitation, poor waste management, and with the lack of electricity, the inability for any cold storage. There are also problems associated with internet connectivity and speed, and the inability then of farmers to communicate with consumers. And indeed, getting signals from mobile phones in remote areas. I can recall many of my experiences in Mindanao in the southern Philippines, where farmers, for example, would have to climb a coconut tree in order to be able to get a phone signal. And then, of course, there are the policies, the government policies that actually support and facilitate the establishment of these smallholder farmer collaborative groups. Terima kasih, Pak.
Sama-sama, Professor Peter. So it was very nice presentation. I can recognize all of the picture that you provided to us. So you maybe taken from Indonesia and then many city. Wow, it was very nice research and nice what is that? Issue to solve. Yeah, that's maybe will be our discussion in next session. So thank you again, Professor Peter.
Sama-sama.
And the time is very what is something like exactly 30 minutes, so it is amazing. Okay, so the next speaker will be Dr. Jonathan. Hello, Dr. Jonathan. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, hello. Good
Yeah,
morning.
hello. Yeah, Dr. Jonathan. Nice to see you here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so the stage will be yours. Okay, so the time
Okay.
will be started from now.
Okay, let me share a portion of my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see it? Let me just adjust.
Okay, clearly.
Let me just adjust the size.
Okay. Yes, perfect.
Okay. Yeah. Final adjustment. Okay. So can you see my screen?
Nice.
Am I my voice is clear?
Very clear.
Okay, thank you, and good morning to everyone. Thank you for inviting me here. I would like to thank the Faculty of Animal and Agricultural Sciences. Specifically, I want to thank Dr. Sivi Gayatri for inviting me to share with you the strategies of our institution during this COVID-19 pandemic. Now, I will be discussing on the Department of Agriculture's Livestock Industry Program and initiatives during health emergencies. As you know, the livestock industry and agriculture in the Philippines in general had faced several challenges since the onset of 2020, actually. So first of all, we have this volcanic eruption in Taal volcano in Batangas. It more than about 11 million US dollars worth of damages, and also affecting about more than 15,000 hectares and almost 2,000 animal heads were affected on this eruption. So that occurred sometime in January 2020. Notwithstanding, of course, our ongoing battles against the African swine fever, or ASF, which started in the last 2 quarters of 2019. And until now,
Dr. Jonathan, sorry to interrupt you because the slide doesn't change. So have you changed?
This is my this is my introduction.
Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Okay. So as I've said, we are still battling against African swine fever, which was not present in our country before. Now, this disease has affected about 20% of the total population of hogs nationwide. Then, of course, as we all know, came the coronavirus disease, which changes the lives, the economy, and the dealings of all of the nations in the world. So these events had a negative effect in the productivity of Philippine livestock industry, as well as personally, as of now, I am now presenting to you from a quarantine facility here in the Philippines because I myself was affected by the COVID-19. I tested positive. Oops, sorry, wait. Okay. So today I'll be presenting the mandate of the Philippine Department of Agriculture, as well as that of the National Livestock Program in which I am involved. I'll be presenting also the statistical contribution of the livestock industry in the Philippine economy, and then move on to the current programs and initiatives that we have done during the onset of the pandemic. Also, I'll be sharing also our policy directions under the new normal. And lastly, I'll share our new initiatives under the National Livestock Program based on the new policy directions that was given to us by our secretary. Okay, at the start of the office of Secretary William Dar, he introduced the new thinking in Philippine agriculture with a vision of a food secure Philippines with prosperous farmers and fisher folks, as you can see on the right lower corner of the screen of the slide. So that is the vision of Secretary William Dar. So with this vision comes 8 strategies or paradigms to level up Philippine agriculture, which I will mention later on in the presentation. So we have this slogan of bounty harvest, high income, as you can see on the lower right side of the slide also, although it is in Tagalog. So that's bounty harvest and high income. So with that vision, the National Livestock Program under the Office of the Undersecretary for Livestock came out with its new mandate anchored on the new thinking in Philippine agriculture, which states that our mandate is to drive and catalyze the accelerated and sustainable development of the livestock and poultry subsectors through formulation of comprehensive policy, preparation of plans, and implementation of programs and projects. This is in consultation and partnership with the private sector and other stakeholders along the value chain. To give you a picture of the coverage of the livestock program, there are 5 agencies under its supervision, 2 of which are attached agencies of the Department of Agriculture, the Philippine Carabao Center, and the National Meat Inspection Service, 1 government corporation, which is the National Dairy Authority, 2 bureaus under the Office of the Secretary, namely the Bureau of Animal Industry and the International Training Center for Pig Husbandry. So these are the agencies that are under the National Livestock Program. Now let me present to you the contribution of livestock and poultry industries to the Philippine economy. In 2019, the livestock and poultry subsector contributed about 33% of the total, or more than 33% of the total value of production in agriculture, crops being the highest contributor at 50%. In the first quarter of 2020, the livestock and poultry subsector experienced growth rates of 0.5% and 3.9% in terms of value of production, respectively. Although the whole of agriculture, in terms of value of production, is down at 1.2%. So livestock and poultry was has a growth rate or has increased, no, it's in its growth rate during the first quarter of 2020. Now, despite the increasing growth rates, there was a slight decrease in the contribution of livestock and poultry subsectors in the first quarter of 2020 compared to the 2019 rate. So the subsector contributed a total of 32.2% of the total value of production in agriculture. Now, the second quarter of 2020, there was a big turnaround in the growth rates of livestock and poultry subsector. As you can see, there is a decrease of 8.5% and 4.7% respectively. And this was experienced by the subsector. So this was believed to be brought about by the full-blown outbreak of ASF in Luzon, in the Luzon Island, coupled with the imposition of enhanced community quarantine that impeded the movement of livestock and their products across the country. Of course, there was a significant decrease in the population of hogs, first of all, due to the culling of the government and voluntary culling also by the private sector. And then second is the the scare of ASF, wherein most of the hog farmers, especially the commercial farmers, hog farmers, decreased their production capacity, or for some, they really stopped and shifted to another commodity like chicken or laying farms. So that significantly decreased the production of agriculture in the Philippines. So with that, the contribution of the livestock and poultry subsector decreased even more to about 30%. So I believe that this will continue to decrease towards the third quarter as we continue to battle against ASF. Now, what are the current initiatives instituted by the country and the Department of Agriculture to address the problems brought about by COVID-19? Okay, so first, the President approved and signed into law what we call is the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act, which is a whole nation approach to redirect all efforts, all focus, and all the budget of the government towards alleviating the effects of COVID-19. Bayanihan, or as the Filipino call it, this is the Filipino spirit of communal unity and cooperation, is encouraged in this law as together we heal as one. Also, the interagency task force was also created. This is the agency that manages the emerging infectious disease in the Philippines, specifically COVID-19. So they are the ones who are giving advice to the president during this crisis. Also, the president issued various executive orders imposing levels of community quarantine in different provinces and regions. So depending on the severity and the number of cases of COVID-19 on certain regions or certain provinces. So this was the effort to control and contain the spread of the virus. On the other hand, the Department of Agriculture, through Secretary William Dar, created several task forces and committees. So aside from the ones that are presented here, there are several more other committees and task forces that were created by the Department of Agriculture. The purpose of which are to manage the daily operations of the department amidst the pandemic, also amidst with the skeleton force of all the offices, and also yung restricted movements, no, of people and products. He also issued several orders related to the movement of foods, animals, and animal products, as well as stabilization of agricultural and fishery products. So here are other issued orders. I will not go to them one by one. So in addition, the department instituted programs and projects that would address food security in the country amidst COVID-19 by refocusing all plans and budgets towards enhancing food productivity, availability, accessibility, and price stability. So under the new normal, due to the pandemic, the secretary gave his policy directions. So his policy direction is embodied in this food security framework. So again, as you can see, it is anchored still in the vision of a food secure, but now with the addition of resilient. So a food secure and resilient Philippines with prosperous farmers and fisher folk. And then the overall goal of this framework is to survive, reboot, regrow the agriculture towards socio-economic recovery and resiliency. And then the objectives of this framework are the following. One is production and availability, accessibility and affordability, price stability, sustainability, and food safety. And then the strategies for us to achieve our goal are the following. So these are the strategies and the enablers. As you can see, these are the 8 paradigms or the 8 strategies that I mentioned a while ago during the start of this presentation. So these are the 8 paradigms to level up the agriculture. So one of the strategy is farm consolidation, modernization, industrialization, export promotion, infrastructure development. And the enablers are budget and investments, legislative support, and roadmap development. And as you can see on the lower part, this is the key result areas wherein we will be measuring ourselves. We are going to measure ourselves in terms of our systems or the agri-fishery value chain integration and logistics, in terms of product, sustainable and higher levels of nutritious food supplies, and competitiveness of agri-fishery products. For people, we are expecting to have empowered farmers and fisher folk by broadening their access to support services and mainstreamed in agri value chain, and also through jobs generation and entrepreneurial activities. For institutions, we are hoping for strengthened partnerships with the local government units, other national government agencies, state universities and colleges, farmer cooperatives and associations, private sector, and other stakeholders. For the environment, we are going to be measured in the increased in resilience and balanced natural ecosystems. So this is the food security framework that we will be following during this pandemic. So for the food resiliency goal, as I mentioned earlier in the framework, this will be achieved through the different food systems of survive, reboot, and lastly, regrow towards socioeconomic recovery and resiliency. As of the moment, the Philippines is now in the last period of the survive phase of the food system. And we are now entering into the reboot phase towards 2021 by when the Bayanihan Act 2 was signed by our president. This law was signed, or the purpose of this law is for us to reboot the economic reboot of our country. So that means we are also going to reboot the agriculture system or the food system in the Philippines. So all our plans and programs and budget are now for the rebooting of agriculture. And under this food resiliency goal, we have this food system policy shifts to sustainably feed a growing population during the new normal. So we have the increasing food sufficiency levels of basic food and other commodities. Second is harmonizing the food system with other related sectors to build resilience. Then we have to adopt context-specific policies, recognizing differences between urban and rural settings. Then we have to have focusing on production to consumption value chain, empowering the marginalized sector, and supporting diverse distribution efforts with good logistics. We have also to have address hunger and all forms of malnutrition, such as obesity and micronutrient deficiencies through production and consumption of nutritious foods, and elevating biosecurity measures. So these are the 6 food systems policy shifts. So within this food system policy shifts, we at the National Livestock Program has developed new initiatives. So based on those policy shifts. So for increasing food sufficiency levels of basic food and other commodities, we have this initiative or this program. We call it the Livestock-Based Livelihood Enhancement and Enterprise Development Program. In here, our implementing strategies is for livestock and poultry clustering and consolidation. Another strategy is for an enterprise development, inclusive agribusiness approach. We are also going to roll out viable technologies. We have to upscale also our success stories. And also we have to incorporate climate change adaptation and resiliency. The second program or initiative is the National Animal Genetic Resources Improvement Program. And among the implementing strategies of this is we are going to restructure and reactivate the National Livestock Genetics Board. We are going to do training of new village-based artificial insemination technicians. So these are the technicians that are village-based. They are on the barangay level, who will do the artificial insemination on animals within the barangay. And also, we are planning to acquire semen sexing machine, or as of now, we are using sexed semen. So we are going to expand the use of sexed semen. Also, we are going to have a network of cryopreservation, wherein we are going to develop new liquid nitrogen plants and a rehabilitation of existing liquid nitrogen plants. Also, we have a capacitation and development of new artificial insemination centers and bull farms, as well as preservation and distribution of native animals. And the third program or project or initiative under this policy shift is cattle feedlot fattening project. This is a project under the new new approved law, which is the Bayanihan to Recover as One Act. So this is a full subsidy project until the beneficiary market their cattle. So full subsidy wherein we provide the animal, we provide the feeds, we provide all the necessary things that the farmer need. All they have to do is just to fatten the cattle, and then afterwards we are also going to help them in marketing their produce. Next, for focusing on production to consumption value chain, the new initiatives are as follows. We have this so-called Integrated National Swine Production Initiative for Recovery and Expansion Project, which is we call INSPIRE. So the concept of this project is to expand the population of swine on the green zones. We have these green zones, or these are ASF free zones, and to have a calibrated repopulation on yellow zones, or those zones that we are in under surveillance. So the idea of this is we will only include those indirectly affected farmers, wherein those farms that did not have any disease, but they are the those farms that have culled their animals because of the we have this 1 kilometer, 7 kilometer, and 10 kilometer radius. Where in 1 kilometer, we will cull the animals. In the 7 kilometer area, we will this is the surveillance area. So the surveillance area those farmers that are in the surveillance area. Those are the ones that we are going to help in calibrated repopulation of swine or hogs. So second,
Dr. Jonathan, sorry
yeah.
to interrupt you. 5 more minutes, please.
Yeah, sure. So second, we have the development, upgrade, and maintenance of government stock farms and stations. So this is a needed initiative, because we have to upgrade all those stock farms or maintain those government stock farms for us to have a readily available animals for our farmers also. And in connection with that, we are also going to have our nucleus and multiplier breeder farm for poultry, swine, and small ruminants, which is a sustainable source of animals with good genetics. Again, for local production of animals and for readily available good genetics. Next, for the elevating biosecurity measures, we have these three initiatives. We have the livestock infrastructure and facility support, the support to prevention and control of economically important diseases, and reinforcing regulatory functions, capacities, and capabilities. So in here we are giving out disinfectants, also vehicle disinfectant facilities also. We are giving out biologicals, drugs, and dewormers to farmers, as well as improving our laboratory, especially the animal disease diagnostic laboratories that are existing now. And also we are also establishing new animal disease diagnostic laboratories in strategic places in the Philippines. For adopting context-specific policies, here we are doing policy review and formulation by intensifying our consultations with livestock and poultry producers, importers, and trader group. Also, we are exploring other knowledge sharing programs with other countries for the improvement of our food safety policies on livestock and poultry. For harmonizing the food systems with other related sectors to build resilience, our initiative is to have our livestock information system and program advocacy, wherein we are going to establish the Philippine Animal Industry Management Information System, as well as enhancement of our existing Philippine Animal Health Information System. Now, during the State of the Nation address of President Duterte, he commended the Department of Agriculture as a result of commitment and efforts by Secretary William Dar to improve the agriculture and fisheries sector. So as he said, I cannot stress enough the importance of agriculture. The growth of our economy depends on the robust agricultural sector. We have learned so many lessons along the way, and I am requesting Congress to pass the Rural Agricultural and Fisheries Development Financing System Act. We aim to provide adequate, accessible, and affordable food for every Filipino through the Plant program. And this 66 billion peso agricultural stimulus package will help the agriculture and fisheries sector recover. So with that, I end my presentation today, and thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Dr. Jonathan. So the time is very precision, 30 minutes. Thank you for your very great presentation. So we can clearly receive the policy from government, many strategy to recover, and then it is very good for us to discuss, because right now Indonesia also should learn from Philippines, because there are three what is that motivation. So it is very interesting: survive, reboot, and grow. I think this is a very focus. And then we would like to open the discussion session. So hopefully the participant also may use this session to ask a question to two presenters, two speakers. So let me know if you have a plan to ask a question. Yeah, so while waiting, so let me ask about the, what is that? The, for Professor Peter, it is about the communal, what is that? Something like communal market. So it is very interesting topic, I think, because recent in the last decades, the communal market it was exist in the last decade, or just happen after the pandemic situation or after the COVID-19. So what do you think about this market?
Surely, this concept of collaborative marketing it has been growing and emerging for many years within the ASEAN region. And indeed, much of my work in the Philippines and in Indonesia has been around forming and or facilitating these agribusiness marketing groups. You can call them cooperatives, you can call them clusters, you can call them associations. I don't really mind what you call them, but effectively, in order for smallholder farmers to be able to enter into modern institutional markets, they have to be able to collaborate. Smallholder farmers are simply too small. And this is the important mechanism, that by bringing the smallholder farmers together, they're able to produce that critical mass of product, which allows them then to meet downstream customers' needs in terms of the consistent quantity, the consistent quality, and indeed the range of product. But we also need to acknowledge that from a government perspective, in terms of technology transfer, smallholder farmers don't get serviced individually. The government can't do this. Dinas Pertanian doesn't have the capacity and ability to service smallholder farmers. But where groups form, then you've got the capacity and ability to talk to those groups and then to reach many farmers simultaneously. And indeed, much of our work in Mindanao with DA was around, again, getting farmers into smallholder groups and then using DA to provide the technologies, for example, in things like integrated pest management, soil health, crop rotation, and indeed improving post-harvest. So it's the mechanisms that are important, and there are a whole lot of tricks that are important in terms of making these groups work. But that's a topic for another conversation. I could spend another 30 minutes very, very easily talking about what makes these groups work. But one of the most important things is that these groups must actually form from within. What happens so often is that with intervention from either government and or NGOs, we actually force farmers into groups. That's not going to work. You've got to introduce the concept, introduce the problem to the farmers, and let the farmers then form their own groups. In mobilizing these groups, excuse me, the most effective mechanism that we've come across so far is what's called the CAT, territorial approach, which has been adopted indeed by CRS, the Catholic Relief Service. And in the Philippines, they pioneered this program called the 8-step plan for agro-enterprise development. We actually utilized that 8-step plan in forming 26 clusters in Cotabato, in northern Mindanao, central Mindanao, and indeed in southern Mindanao. These groups were very, very successful and actually came together in what we called a confederation. And that allowed then the confederation then to actually start to allocate product and plantings within their own groups. So it's a focused approach that within FAO has been called linking farmers to markets, and it's a global approach. That it's a recognition globally that we have to get smallholder farmers into groups if we're going to be able to mobilize them to be able to service markets in a better way.
Yeah. So it means it should be support not only by government, but also most of the people from NGO or maybe from other organizations. So maybe we can accelerate the production for food and may solve the problem during this pandemic situation, isn't it, Professor Peter?
Absolutely. And in terms, for example, with our work in the Philippines, our partner was University of the Philippines, Mindanao. I've only just concluded a contract with GIZ, the German International Aid Agency.
What is that?
GIZ.
Oh, GIZ. Yes.
Yep. To actually work with a group in Bangkok to actually look into public-private partnerships as again a way and a means of being able to bring about much of the changes that Jonathan spoke about, with the desire for government now to interface with the private sector. But in order to do that, you need to realize that there need to be benefits. Now, one of the most effective models here is again produced or has been developed by IFAD, the International Fund for Agricultural Development. And they talk not about PPPs, as in public-private partnerships, but indeed they introduce a fourth P, public-private producer partnerships. And I think that that's really, really important to recognize the importance of working with the producers. They must be included in any of these programs. And that means mobilizing them in some way into some form of group. So it's this group formation process that is the foundation for any efforts to bring smallholder farmers into market.
Yes. And this is very effective also to something like to boost the production of food. And what do you think about Dr. Jonathan? So while waiting for the participant for asking a question, so let me ask about is there any something like collaboration for supporting government program based on the collaboration action from other countries such as Australia and Indonesia also? What is your perspective about this collaboration? Is there any policy from government to make something like more tight in a collaboration? So what do you think about this one? Because you are a government officer, so I think you know good about this one.
Yeah, as I mentioned in one of my slides, we have this exploration of knowledge sharing program. As of now, we are in our second engagement with the Korean government in developing our traceability system. So we are really open. The Philippine government or the Department of Agriculture is open for any collaborations from other countries. If these countries are needing help from the Philippines or needing knowledge or experience from the Philippines, we can also have collaborations.
Yeah, and for maybe in this case about the Australia collaboration with your country. I mean, is there any supporting agent or maybe a foundation about the AUSAID, maybe based on your knowledge?
Yeah, we have collaboration with Australia in terms of our in developing our Philippine animal health information system.
Yeah,
so
it was still
before,
continuing.
I think I think 2000, early 2000, we have this collaboration with Australia, and they help us with developing our registry system of animals.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. So still continue until now, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I have a question from the participant. So would you please to share the slide, or maybe should I only read? Okay, while waiting for the sharing slide. Okay, so this is a question for Professor Peter from one of our committee, Miss Binti, because it is very interesting. Oh, this is for Mr. Peter. Okay, so the question is, what the strategy can be applied to direct marketing from smallholder farmer to get the competitive price? Yeah, this is very nice. And then we will waiting your response, Professor Peter.
Yeah. Well, clearly, this is one of the main motivations for smallholder farmers to enter into direct marketing modes is to get a more competitive price, to in fact gain a greater share of the retail price. But what we need to appreciate and to understand that if smallholder farmers are actually going to then eliminate the market intermediaries, those smallholder farmers have to then perform the activities and the tasks that the market intermediaries would ordinarily perform. And what we need to appreciate here is that marketing costs. Marketing is work. Marketing is a task. And so if smallholder farmers are going to engage in direct marketing, they're no longer engaged in production. So we need to think about then how we can actually facilitate that. And given, as we talked about earlier, the fact that they're away from, some distance away, that's going to create a whole lot of additional costs, particularly if you've got a whole lot of smallholder farmers bringing, let's say, one bag of product to market. That's not going to be cost effective. And so again, this is where we need to start to talk about the collaboration that occurs within groups, where the groups might then appoint one or two people to be their market intermediaries. Those group members then take all the product from the farmers to the market. They sell the product and then distribute the funds back to the smallholder farmers when they return to the village, because there are costs associated with selling, with accommodation, with the payment of fees, with transportation, and other problems associated with the fact that if, for example, you're engaged in either of these box schemes or you're engaged, for example, with farmers markets, you have to actually sell everything. You can't bring it back. So what that means then too is that there's a lot of discounting that goes on at the end of the day, because people know, and again, we've observed this in the Bangkirahong in Davao, where farmers actually tried to market direct, that everyone else would wait until the end of the day because they knew the farmers had to go, and then the farmers would have to drop price to quit the product that they had, and prices actually dropped to so low prices that the farmers weren't getting paid literally at all. So it's a complex issue around getting a competitive price here. But fundamentally, as I indicated, the key strategy is one of differentiation. It's one of being able to provide products that consumers want and understanding what it is that those consumers want in terms of what we call the intrinsic quality attributes. The fact that consumers can't often see the difference, but knowing, for example, that the product has been produced in a way that is sustainable and that the funds are going back to support the rural communities. I know, again, one of my experiences that we utilised in Davao, NCCC, one of the major supermarkets there, I brought my farmers down, we put the farmers into the supermarket, and the farmers actually promoted their own product, telling the story then to the consumers about how they'd grown it and what they were doing to reduce the impact on the environment and what they were doing to reduce the chemicals, which in fact was a lot of the work that we were providing. And of course, then through D of A, through integrated pest management programs, that provided this point of differentiation. Consumers loved it. And basically that, we gave then our farmers that strategy, that foothold in the market.
Okay. Yeah, so I think there are 2 points. One, agreement. A second one is understanding. I think that's the most important to solve this problem to get the competitive price, I think. Okay, so
Yes.
Professor Peter, we have one participant who want to ask you. So it is came from Azahra Salsabila. So Azahra, so would you please to unmute, and then you can introduce yourself, then you can choose which speaker you want to ask. Okay, now Zahra, so the time is yours, and then for the next Mr. Yohanis, yeah, so you can prepare yourself. Yeah, okay, after Zahra Salsabila. Okay, don't forget to unmute. Okay.
Good afternoon, Professor. My name is Azahra Salsabila. I'm from Faculty of Diponegoro University. My question is for Mr. Jonathan. Amid the pandemic condition, we must take care of our health to stay healthy and fit. One of them is by eating healthy and nutritious food. My question is how to maintain food quality and safety from the coronavirus, from the producer to the hand of customer during the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Oh, it is very nice. How to keep and how to manage the distribution. I think this distribution and then the quality of the food. Okay, so Professor Peter.
Oh, okay. I think in the first instance, we need to acknowledge that, as far as I understand anyway, that the COVID is not actually spread by the food itself. It's spread by the contact that people have with food. And that becomes then one of the most critical elements here, is appreciating and understanding then the opportunities and the way in which food can be potentially contaminated. Now, with things like fresh food, it's not such a problem unless, of course, you're eating the fruit in a fresh manner, things like salads and what have you. But where the food, of course, has been cooked and prepared, then the virus is going to be eliminated. But the issue that then remains, of course, is the potential and possibility for cross-contamination, where bench tops and surfaces and utensils and things may potentially carry the virus. That's certainly the key issue here in terms of maintaining or reducing the spread. But certainly, as I've indicated, and I do preempt my question here or my response by at least my understanding that the virus itself is not spread by food. It's largely, the human contact, the breathing, the coughing that spreads the virus, and hence the food itself should, be not a manner in which that becomes contaminated. It's more the fact that we're involved in purchasing food from things like retail stores, where again we interact with people at close proximity, and particularly in things like wet markets, which can, of course, be particularly crowded, and that can, of course, lead to the potential contamination, again, by person-to-person transmission rather than food-to-person transmission.
But Professor, so because in traditional market, so we cannot avoid the person-to-person negotiation. So I think it is important to see and then how to avoid them one.
Well, it's critically important, and certainly the debate that you're hearing right now, I guess, in terms of the US election, where again President Trump is having a go at his health official, Dr. Fauci. He's talking about masks and the absolute now importance of masks. Now, and again, within Australia, I'm here in Perth, in Western Australia. We have the only COVID outbreaks we have in Perth are the ships, which unfortunately, Jonathan, have Filipino crew. That's the problem that we've got at the moment. It's a whole lot of sick Filipinos who've come to Western Australia as the crew on ships. but we haven't had
Yeah.
a case here of transmission for over 120 days. Whereas, of course, our colleagues in New South Wales and Victoria are coming out of lockdown where the use of masks is now mandatory. So certainly, again, in wet markets, again, this is where government needs to sort of come in and decree, or to basically say that, yes, people should be wearing masks. And of course, all vendors, particularly within the wet market, should be trained in good hygiene practices. So the use of masks and, of course, the use of sanitizers to prevent potential cross-contamination of product.
Yes, I think I also agree with you about this one, hygiene attitude, and then to avoid the transmission of the virus. Okay, so we still have one participant to ask, but we still have a participant who wants to ask also using chat. So would you please committee to share the screen so we can one by one, because we have time only 5 or maybe 6 more minutes. Maybe this question goes to Professor Peter. So from Mbak Siwi, how do the agriculture support system help to market agriculture system, especially for smallholder farmers? What do you think, Professor?
I guess here, Sui, that what we're looking at and trying to understand here are things like the policy environment. And please correct me if I'm wrong here, but this is how I'm going to interpret the question. Policy is at a government level is absolutely critical in terms of supporting the system. And I certainly know that within much of Southeast Asia, you do have things like price support mechanisms. Now, of course, from an Australian perspective, we do not engage in price support mechanisms. Unfortunately for us, we face the music, but this is something that each country needs to determine and to decide. And certainly in Indonesia, you have, for example, Bulog in terms of price subsidies and price support systems for rice. And I mean, that's throughout much of Southeast Asia, the importance of assuring that there is a basic supply of basic products. But as I've indicated, in places like Australia, we do not have price support mechanisms. So what that then brings back into how within we need to compete and how we need to operate then is all around understanding what government then can do to facilitate or to make the system smoother and how to work easier. Now, coming back to much of my presentation, there's a whole lot of stuff around, for example, public-private partnerships. How does government actually engage with the private sector? Government's not particularly good at engagement in markets efficiently and economically. So what we tend to do is to see that this is a function that is better performed by the private sector. But government needs to provide the infrastructure in terms of things like roads and distribution centres. Government also needs to provide much of the infrastructure in the rural areas for basically packaging and distribution support centres where smallholder farmers can bring the product can be then graded, sorted, it's put onto trucks and then sent off to the markets, because you don't want to be shipping second-grade products into the cities where they're just going to be dumped. There's a whole range of things like road taxes and other issues, again, thinking both about my work in the Philippines here and more recently my work with UTS in Surabaya, where we were looking at developing a food plan for the city of Surabaya and issues around road tax. So that, as you know, each time a vehicle shifts, for example, from, let's say, Malang and is carrying fresh vegetables to Jakarta, each time that truck moves into a different regency, the truck gets hit for another lot of taxes and tariffs. And that leads then to things like people overpacking the truck so that they reduce then the costs. So you start to see how when we look at support systems holistically, we start to see a whole range of issues emerging where support from government is required. And so it's required, as I indicated a moment ago, in terms of technology transfer. It's required in terms of things like, again, facilitating farmers and enabling them to come together in smallholder into the, as these groups, cooperatives, clusters. But yet we've got to be able to get those groups formally registered, and registered quickly and easily and at little to no cost for the smallholder farmers. Now, again, working recently with FAO in the Philippines, I was involved with a program there around, not with DA, but with DAR, the Department for Agrarian Reform, to look at how we could improve the governance of what was called the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program, CARP, in terms of then whether smallholder farmers were actually benefiting from these arrangements with the private sector. And it's these arrangements that lead to leasehold systems and the leasing of land for companies like Dole and Del Monte in banana production and pineapple production. So again, we need to be able to have government support for these types of initiatives. Technology transfer, the certification, and particularly group certification, because again, group certification becomes critical. And one of the best examples here is in Thailand, where groups are certified, but the group certification comes because of the confidence that the group members have within each other, that each other is doing the right sort of job. And you see now how that comes back to, as I spoke before, the importance of letting the groups form, so that the groups form from people who trust one another rather than pushing them into groups, because that will cause people to cheat. And if people cheat, that undermines the group and the whole group collapses. So there's many issues here where policy is really important, and government support is really important to assist smallholder farmers.
Yes, Professor, because it is also connected to the the next question. I think the next question is has already answered by your explanation. So let me see it from Nur Baladina. This is about the welfare of the farmer. So I think if the government provided a good facility, it is also directly increase the welfare for farmer, isn't it?
Okay. Again, if I look at this question, what we're also doing here is we're starting to recognize, again, as I spoke earlier, about some of the problems that we have with greater urbanization. What effectively happens with urbanization, and please appreciate and understand this, that the COVID pandemic has had its greatest impact, not in the rural areas, but indeed in urban areas, because urban people are detached from the food system, particularly those who live in the slums and the disadvantaged people. And so government also needs to find a mechanism and a way and a means of being able to support those people. And as you say, at the same time, you can improve the welfare of farmers. What we've started to see within many of the countries around the world are things like community food kitchens emerging. So this is where the community itself has taken control, recognizing that there are problems. And so the community then is accessing food from farmers that would otherwise go to waste. They're cooking it and preparing it and distributing it within communities. There are a whole range of other programs like school feeding programs. But again, those have been upset because of the fact that kids are no longer going to school, and so they're no longer getting that main meal that so many families and again, the slum areas depend upon. So that's become a key issue. We're also seeing a lot of community self-support from the fact that communities themselves now are starting to grow more and more of their own produce. And in fact, during, again, my time in Malang late last year, there's a very, very good role model, Glinting Go Green. It's a small, I think that's what it's called. Green. Yeah, it's a small community in Malang. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name of how you get down to the small regions or areas, but it's a very small part of the city of Malang. But this community has actually taken upon itself a way and a mechanism of producing more and more food itself, particularly fresh vegetables, which are then distributed to the kindergarten and the community childcare facility. And then at the same time, they've blocked the drains where they've got the catfish in the drains. The water is then being pumped through, and as it drains down, the feed then goes into feeding the catfish. I mean, so these community self-help programs are starting to emerge again throughout many of the world's impoverished cities or within these impoverished regions as a way and a means, again, of supporting.
Yeah.
So government needs to provide the mechanisms where, for example, if land is vacant, that communities can use it until such time again as the economy actually gets moving again.
Yeah, okay. So the Klintang means Klintung. Yeah, Klintung, Malang. So Malang has
That's right.
a program. Yeah, Klintung, Malang, Ijo Royo Royo. Can you spell Ijo Royo Royo?
I think it's GLINTUNG, Glintang Gold Green.
Yes, you're right. Klintang. Go green means in Javanese, Ijo Royo Royo. If
There
you can
you go.
spell this one, so you will come to Indonesia and as an Indonesian resident. Okay, so thank you so much, Professor. So it is very interesting, but we still have one question for Dr. Jonathan. So maybe 1 or 2 minutes, Dr. Jonathan, about this one. What is the challenge and opportunity about how to multiply the production in Philippines? Okay, that time is yours.
Yeah, okay. One of the biggest challenge during the pandemic, not just during the pandemic, but of course during this ASF outbreak also, and also during the volcanic eruption of Taal. One of our great challenge, according to our livestock industry, is the movement of their products. Every day they are moving their products, the live animals from one main island to the other. For example, from Mindanao to Visayas, and then to Luzon. Then Luzon, all of the products or the produce goes to Visayas and Mindanao. Now, due to the pandemic and due to the quarantine or the community quarantines imposed by the president, as well as the quarantine movement of animals imposed by the Bureau of Animal Industry. So, meaning the green zones cannot go, the red zones, or those are affected with ASF, cannot go into the green zones, or those ASF free areas. So this is one of the biggest challenge that we faced during that time, during the second until the third quarter of this year. Now,
is it including buffalo also, Dr. Jonathan?
All of it, all of the animals, all of the products, agricultural products as well. Yeah, not just the animal products, all the agricultural products were affected by these enhanced or these community quarantines, and also the movement due to the quarantine of animals due to ASF. Now, these are this is the main. Actually, up until now, we are still solving these problems, but bit by bit, they are already transporting their products, especially from Mindanao area, going to Visayas and Luzon, because most of the pig producing areas are in the Mindanao area, aside from Luzon. So 50% of the hog production is in Luzon. 50% is in Visayas and Mindanao. But the 50% in Visayas and Mindanao, most of them are in Mindanao. So now they are transporting now the hogs and the hog products from Mindanao to Luzon. So the government helped them in facilitating their transportation. One is we help them in the some of the regulatory requirements So we are easing up the regulatory requirements. Second, we are working with other government agencies such as the Philippine Ports as a authority, and as well as other shipping lines. We are also communicating with them and asking them to help us in transporting these products from Mindanao to Luzon and the Visayas area. So
Okay.
those are
So I
the
think
solution that we
solution, the good
yeah,
one.
that we have we have started to transfer these products. Now
Yes,
in
to
terms
make
of
it fast.
yeah, to make it fast. Now in terms of opportunities, this time this is a good opportunities for the livestock industry, especially our backyard farmers, to really engage in the production of animals, because as of now the Department of Agriculture is really into all of our budget in the livestock program is geared towards the rebooting of the livestock industry,
Yeah.
specifically for chicken, cattle, carabao, and small ruminants.
Yeah.
So for
And
swine,
how about the
we
Carabao
are
itself? Sir?
we are
How about
also
the Carabao itself? Is there
the
any
carabao.
special program for Carabao development?
Yes, yes, yes. Through the Philippine Carabao Center, they are
Oh, yeah.
they are engaged in a research and also in improving the genetics of our Philippine Carabao. Right now, I think they have developed uh, our own breed of Carabao, cross between a Mura
Oh,
and
crossbreed
our Philippine Carabao.
Mura.
Yeah,
Mm.
which is very
Yeah.
very adaptable to our to our climate, and also adaptable to the smallholders also. So the size, so they don't have these big horns already.
Horn?
They have a very very small horn, so they are very
Oh.
good for the smallholders. So the smallholders can
Mm.
have 3 to 5 animals within their backyard for them. So, but
Yeah.
most of these
Very
are
good.
for milking purposes,
Oh,
for dairy.
yeah, buffalo milking. Yeah. So I think this explanation also answered the next question from one of participant. I think this is about the Carabao, and it has answered by you. And then the last, this is I'm so sorry because this is the time is up, but I have a promise to one participant to ask a question. So Pa Yonis, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm still
Pa
fine.
Yo
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
still fine.
Yohanis.
Yeah.
Yeah, excuse me. The time is very limited. 30 minutes, 30 seconds, please.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Peter. Uh, hello. I hear me.
Yeah, sorry for
Yeah,
this
yeah. Yeah,
disturbance.
I agree with
Okay.
you, Professor, that smallholder farmers should organize themselves to enter to the market. But during the pandemic, sorry, I'm Johannes Ngongo from Timor East Nusa Tenggara. Yeah, yeah. During the pandemic, it is small farmers, it's really limit for the market. As you know that during the pandemic, even the government official, it is the big market for the small farmers, they plant their own food, maybe rice and maize not, but for vegetable, etc., they play also. This is the big market for the small farmers, but due to the limited market, so I think it's very difficult for them
Yeah.
even to organize them to enter to the market. And also, then the government official, what we call is PNS, sometimes they look them to go to the wet market during the pandemic, so it's limited market. And it is, what is your opinion, Professor? And I continue with the Dr. Jonathan, I think. Jonathan, you meant magandang umaga po. Yeah. You mentioned before related to African swine fever.
ASF.
Yeah. I think we have experience also in Timor maybe in the beginning of the year, and after that continue with the pandemic COVID-19. This is really have a negative impact for our small small farmers. It's what we call
Yeah.
double squeeze, yeah, double trap for them. Then it's difficult to recover.
Yeah.
Can you share your experience? Can you share your experience how to overcome this kind of disease? And because we are
Yeah.
team of small farmers is struggling to overcome this
Yeah.
problem. And probably
Experience
maybe
for
the next maybe we have joined reset or whatever you call between
yeah.
Philippines, South Sulawesi, and then Timor.
Mm.
This is, because this is important animals for us, I think, both for
Yes.
income.
Animal resources also came
Yeah,
from that island.
yeah, so from the island.
Yeah. Okay. So, Pak Yohanes, thank you so much for your question. It is very nice because you addressed the question to two speaker. I mean, but we still don't have any time for for answering your question. But for closing, yeah. So let me provide 1 minute for each speaker to close this session, and then also to answer
Okay.
the Pak Yohanes
Yeah, thank you.
question. I think it is impossible, but at least we can still have an explanation about the question from Pak Yohanes. Okay, so from the beginning, Pak Peter.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Pak Johannes.
Yeah, okay.
The challenge, and again, it's very much dependent, and we see this variation across countries. And I'm thinking here of Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, we actually saw the closure of the traditional markets as a result of reducing the spread of the COVID virus, and it was very much for the reasons that we spoke earlier, because it's in the traditional markets where it's crowded, it's congested, and this is where it's most likely for contamination to occur. But in their place, government has now moved the traditional markets outdoors. And in fact, I'm working with colleagues in Bangladesh as we speak to institute a whole lot of measures around effectively farmers markets and rebuilding these linkages between consumers and the smallholder farmers, utilising exactly the sort of tools that I outlined before, getting the farmers into groups, getting them then to be able to produce the range, the quality and the continuity. And government is supporting that by providing the infrastructure in the places where the markets actually take place, but also in terms of supporting the transportation of the product from the farms to these new markets. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, so I think the linkage is the very important thing. So maybe Pak Yohanes, so you can still have a chat to Professor Peter also, and then provide the email to Professor Peter to discuss more about this one. Yeah, and then the closing for Dr. Jonathan. So the time will be yours for maybe for 1 minute, please.
Yeah, okay. I would like to answer the question of Sir Ioannis. Okay, as a closing. So actually, the Philippines is now really struggling very hard, no, to really contain and control the spread of the African swine fever. As of now, the whole of Luzon has been affected of this disease. Some parts of Mindanao has been affected, but the good thing is that the Visayas region, which is a very island group of region, has not been affected by this disease. So we are really having all of our efforts to really maintain these ASF free zones in Visayas region. However, if in your region there has not been any disease or any reported disease in your region about ASF, the main thing that you have to do is to ban all the imports from infected countries, of against ASF. So that's one, banning, and then avoid the swill feeding.
Yeah,
that's the second.
So
and then also
isolate.
third, you block the entry of international ports. Block the entry at international ports. And then you educate your people about ASF. And then if there are the veterinarians in your country can also submit samples. So that's BAN.
Yeah.
That stands for BABES. BABES. BAN imports.
BABES.
BABES. BAN imports. Avoid swill feeding. Block entry
Yeah.
at international ports. Educate your people. And
Oh.
S is submit samples.
Yeah, to isolate and then to what is that? To avoid the dispersion of the infection. I think
Yeah.
that's a good explanation, Dr. Jonathan. And then I think the time is up right now, so I have two words for the both of you. One is linkage, communal development services, maybe. Yeah, communal agent. And then the other one is the facility. I think this facility helps people a lot. I think this is the end of our session. Thank you so much for the very great presentation for Professor Peter and Dr. Jonathan. So see you again in the next future and hope you to see you in Indonesia in Diponegoro University together with us. We want to see Mbak Siwi, right? So if there is a Mbak Siwi and the beside of Mbak Siwi, there is me. Yeah. So okay, but Miss Binti, sorry for the late, but thank you so much for time for me to as a moderator, and thank you so much for the Professor Peter and Dr. Jonathan. Okay, so I think this end of the session. Thank you so much, and see you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you to Ahmad Hikmatullah Alberi, PhD, as moderator for this second plenary session, and thank you to Professor Peter Jabet and Jonathan Vergara Sabiniano, DBM MSc, as a keynote speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, this is at the end of plenary session. Next session is parallel session. Before we start, so we'll have photo session. So please turn your camera on. We'll take your picture. So there are 11 or 12 pages here. So prepare yourself. Don't forget to turn on your camera so we can see your brightest smile here. Okay. The house ready. So we'll take the picture. Okay, so for the first page, 1, 2, 3. Okay, the second page, 1, 2, 3. Okay, for the third page, 1, 2, 3. The fourth page, 1, 2, 3. The fifth page, 1, 2, 3. The page number 6, 1, 2, 3. Number 7, 1, 2, 3. Number 8. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Number 9. 1, 2, 3. Number 10. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is the last page because we have more than 200 participants for today. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, sorry, another one more. For the last page, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you so much for your attention for this plenary session. So the next session is parallel session. Attention to all presenters, please do not forget to rename your username with the format room_paper ID and underscore your full name. You can see the room number and paper ID also at the group program that we shared by your mail. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have break until 1 p.m. and we'll separate you based on your scope at the breakout room at the parallel station. So, if you are a participant, so you can chat the administrators to break the room based on the scope that you want. So you can use the forum participant and underscore room underscore full name. So we can separate you, we can put you into the breakout room based on the scope that you are interested in. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we have a break until 1 p.m. So please come back to this room before 1 p.m. because we'll separate you based on the breakout room based on the scope that you are present later at the parallel session. Okay, thank you so much, and we'll see after the break. And thank you so much for all the keynote speakers. Thank you to Professor Anang M. Legowo. Thank you to Professor Peter Jebet, to Associate Professor Dr. Patra Pason, and also to Jonathan Vergara Sabiniano, DBM MSc. And also thank you so much for all the moderators. And see ya at the parallel session.
Thank you, Professor Peter. Thank you, Dr. John. Thank you.
You're most welcome, Sui. Thank you. All good.
Yeah. Thank you, Patra.
Welcome.
All right. I'll see you again in about 10 days, Sui.
Thank you, Prof. Anang. See you in Semarang for Patra, Peter, and also for Dr. John.
Look at.
Hopefully
Bye-bye now,
can
Sui.
see you soon. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.